a farm where the animals are beaten, exploited, and starved. So the novel Animal Farm starts and ends. Animal Farm, written by George Orwell, is a satirical allegory for Stalin's rise to power in the Russian Revolution. Napoleon, the pig, represents Stalin, who eventually becomes a tyrannical dictator over the other animals. But how did this happen? At the novel's start, Old Major, another pig who symbolizes Karl Marx/Lenin, introduces the farm's animals to animalism, aka communism. Animalism has 7 main commandments, which are that whatever goes on 2 legs is an enemy, whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. No animal shall wear clothes. No animal shall sleep in a bed. No animal shall drink alcohol. No animal shall kill any other animal. And all animals are equal. By the end of the novel, Napoleon violated all of these commandments. These rules were meant to separate the animals on the farm from human society. Napoleon and Snowball lead the farm to remove the shackles of their owners and establish the farm as an animalist farm. Snowball represents Trotsky, who helped lead during the start of the Russian Revolution. At first, the farm runs well. Everyone is well fed, happy, and equal. Eventually, Napoleon's co-leader Snowball is removed from the farm, and Napoleon is now in charge of running the whole farm. Needing an enemy to blame for things going wrong, Napoleon claims that Snowball is destroying the farm. This is where the farm begins its downward spiral. The farm's food is sold off when the animals are hungry, and they work to the bone to build a windmill that will supposedly help them. The windmill represents multiple things. First, it represents Russia's industrialization during this period. It also represents Stalin's 5-year plan, which was the economic plan for the country. Napoleon stole Snowball's idea for the windmill, with Squealer remarking, Napoleon had never in reality been opposed to the windmill. On the contrary, it was he who had advocated for it in the beginning. At this point, Napoleon has a group of dogs in charge of silencing any opponents who threaten his power. Eventually, Napoleon becomes identical to the original owners, even associating with their neighbors as well. But how come a system built on equality leads to a cruel dictatorship? There's no system in place to stop a dictatorship. Because animalism has no laws and no real government, there are no roadblocks to Napoleon's rise. Once Snowball is ousted, Napoleon has absolute power, which corrupts him absolutely. Napoleon maintains his power by keeping the animals uneducated. Only the pigs receive education. They are constantly monitored. The other animals receive little to no education and can barely read. Encouraged to simply listen to Napoleon, any who thinks for themselves is punished by death. Boxer, a horse who represents the Russian working class, throughout the entire story says that Napoleon is always right, that he must work harder. When he heard propaganda about Snowball, he began to doubt Napoleon. Boxer was taken away to die a few days later. Napoleon, trying to maintain his power and image at all costs, silenced the hardest worker on the farm. Propaganda is key for dictators to maintain power, and the character of Squealer manipulates the farm and tells the animals lies. Squealer was Napoleon's closest confidant and made what Napoleon did seem justifiable to the animals. Changing the virtues of animalism, Napoleon uses Squealer to make the animals forget what they were originally, such as not being able to drink alcohol and sleeping in beds. To keep the animals controlled, Napoleon establishes a ceremony to have the animals remember how bad the farm was before, and that the farm was better now. Focusing on an ideal, Napoleon reminds them of animalism's idea, not the grim reality caused by it. Napoleon establishes a hierarchy in a system where none should exist, which is why the famous quote from the novel, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, exist. Moses, a raven who represents religion, was the first animal removed from the farm. Moses told the animals of the farm of Sugar Candy Mountain, which is heaven, which is why they cast him out. Quote from the novel, the animals hated Moses because he told tales, it did not work, but some of them believed in Sugar Candy Mountain, and the pigs had to argue very hard to persuade them that there was no such place. Moses was cast out because his tales of Sugar Candy Mountain made the animals not want to work, paralleling Karl Marx stating, religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. According to Marx, the hope of heaven means that people will not care as much about their current circumstances, and thus will not want communism. Many, when they read this novel and other works of Orwell, tend to associate political leaders and policies with events and people in the novel, but this is not the case. George Orwell, the author of the novel, was himself a socialist. Despite this, he knew that communism could easily lead to a dictatorship, so he wrote the novel. The pig's want for power led to his fellow animals being beaten and whipped at his command.